Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, new education secretary, same problems. As the governor appoints her fifth head of public education, we revisit several problems a former superintendent says need to be addressed in our classrooms.
We've kind of lost our way, right? And so we're trying to grapple. Let's move back to this old system because we can control it more. Why aren't we looking at what's the best thing for kids and how do we stop that?
And are the kids all right? We asked two school counselors how students are coping with the unique stressors they're facing. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm executive producer Jeff Proctor. For the fifth time in as many years, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has appointed a new public education secretary. Mariana Padilla, who has served as the director of the New Mexico Children's Cabinet since the start of the governor's administration, was appointed earlier this week. Padilla replaces Arsenio Romero, who resigned late last month after being told to choose between his job and the one he's pursuing, the next president of New Mexico State University. Romero held his position at the Public Education Department for about a year and a half. Padilla might be new to the rotating chair that holds our state's public education secretary, but the problems remain the same, and we plan on revisiting them during this week's show. In less than 20 minutes, we'll return to my conversation with two school counselors about the unique hurdles students are confronting and how they've impacted their mental health and coursework. But we begin with a long view on some of the nagging issues inside our state's public education system. In our first segment, correspondent Russell Contreras speaks with Dr. Karen Sanchez-Griego. The two sat down just days before Dr. Sanchez-Griego's official retirement as superintendent of the Cuba, New Mexico Independent School District back in June. She had a long career as an administrator, an advocate, and a champion for change. Russell asks about graduation rates and whether the public education department is still serving its purpose.
Dr. Karen Sanchez-Griego, thank you for joining us here on New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you, Mr. Contreras, for the invite. I'm so honored.
I've known you for years when I was at the Albuquerque Journal, but before we get into your career here and your latest tenure at Cuba Schools, walk me through it. As an educator, you were instrumental in the expansion of Enlace in the 2000s. You guys launched a well-lauded anti-truancy program. Looking back there 20 years later, in your opinion, what worked at that time and what didn't work?
I think when the Kellogg Foundation funded this, right, and it was in 34 programs across 9 states. New Mexico was one of the largest because we did an overall statewide initiative. I think it was really looking at what is the promise of Latino children and communities, and the success was the communities, right? It was really grounded in their voice. It was grounded in their students' voice. It was grounded in really trying to look at the wealth of the culture and language of that community and what their kids could bring to the forefront. And I think realizing that they were not just trying to not have their kids go to school. You know, there have been lots of comments that had come out that, oh, they don't care about their kids. Hispanic parents don't care about their kids, just ridiculous things. And so when we kind of came together and kind of talked about it, and worked on it, right, we saw so many parents and communities come to the forefront. And from the legislature all the way down and all the way up to DC at the time. In fact, President Bush, second President Bush, recognized Enlaces communities for their family centers and their recognition working in schools with families and communities.
You were also right there when the state moved from the Department of Education to the Public Education Department under Governor Richardson. This was a very exciting time. We thought we were reforming education overall. Looking back now, there's an effort to bring back this old structure because people believe the Public Education Department's not working. What is your reaction to that we want to move back to this other model? By that time, you remember, it wasn't working. What is your reaction to that?
I think as educators, we grapple, right? We're like, what is going to be the easiest thing to get us out whatever situation that we're in, right? I do remember when Governor Richardson was there and there was this big push to move to the secretary. And the reason that they were moving to that was because of politics, right? The political pressures that were being placed on who was getting hired as the Secretary of Education. Were they predominantly looking at students all across New Mexico? And I think the beginning impetus for this was really looking at how do we move to put a person in place that then does the work that is really instrumental for children. Not that the other secretary wasn't, but I thought it was a positive thing. You know, we were very excited about the fact that these things were going to happen. But then what we saw was there was a lot of politics that went on, right? It would be just like, it's, I think with Richardson, we saw a lot of his initiatives. He was a very beloved governor, right? So was and wasn't, but in education he was. I remember the times that he spent with children, not only in Lasse, but across the state, really talking to them, letting them do a lot of things. But he really pushed for Dr. Garcia to come in and take a look at how they were going to reform those efforts. But there was still political things that went on. I think now, and working as a superintendent, I think and retiring here soon, is really that we've kind of lost our way, right? And so we're trying to grapple. Let's move back to this old system because we can control it more. Or, you know, let's stay in this system because we control it more. We can control it more in a different way, right? When you have a Secretary of Education, you're really working through the governor's office. When you work with a Secretary of Education who is placed in by elected board members, then you're kind of working with a different set of politics. So it's still political. I think for me, it's really looking at what's the best thing for kids, and why aren't we looking at what's the best thing for kids, and how do we stop that?
Sure. And you and I would talk 20 years ago. New Mexico was ranked at the bottom of a number of benchmarks in education. This used to anger you. You used to be very upset about this. Flash forward 2 decades now. New Mexico is still ranked near the bottom of a number of benchmarks. We're looking at test scores, graduation rates. We're still at the bottom. What are we doing wrong?
You know, I think that we don't look at systems change. I mean, one of the big things that I learned when we had done the collaborative of Enlace, and we were doing work with the law school, the medical school, lots of different organizations, and we were looking at education as the pipeline, right? You start them early when they're born, you move them up to PK-12, you move them into the different areas that they want to be, and it was still venued in career and college preparation, and kids were able to choose, but the systems never change. And so even when I went to Cuba 6 years ago, systemically, they were running the school district the same as they had been in the 1980s, which we know does not work. And so the systemic change is what is needed in order to be able to reform education in New Mexico. It's not just, hey, we have a reading program, hey, we have a literacy program, hey, we have this, hey, we have that. It's really taking a look at where are we spending our money? What are we doing in terms of students? Are we honoring and looking at their culture and language? Yazi Martinez, in my opinion, has been an incredible push to support educational equality, because that's what we see in New Mexico. That's why our children are not doing well. We're not looking at equality, and our system continues to look at this. The first year, Russell, I'll tell you that the first year that I started as the superintendent in Cuba, and I'd been a superintendent on the Navajo Nation as well, and I was also in Arlington, Virginia, had been recruited, and I will tell you that Latinos in general, especially with doctorates, are recruited all over the nation, almost exceptionally without being in the state of New Mexico. But the first meeting I went to with 89 superintendents, number one, I looked around the room and I said, oh my God, we don't even reflect or look like the student population that we work in. And nothing necessarily, not to be cruel or rude about that, but I was asking myself why. If we did this work 30 years prior and now we're here and still we're not reflective, not one Native American, that's not true. There was one Native American superintendent in Magdalena. But one of the things that when we started talking about Yazi Martinez and some of the cultural issues or some of the issues that were ineffectively affecting children, right? Not looking at how we were going to do this. So how we're looking at test scores, the different ways of providing assessment. And what I heard from my colleagues is we don't have those children. And it was like, what? I almost felt like as a 1980 graduate, and so that makes me old, right, of Rio Grande High School, it made me think of how is this happening? The same thing that I heard in my high school, with those that run our school districts 30-something years later. that was very, very frustrating. So there were several times that I did have conversation out loud, but I felt like my colleagues in some cases didn't want to hear it.
You mentioned superintendents. The average superintendent here in New Mexico, their tenure is about 1.5 years. So it creates a lot of instability in our school districts. You bucked that trend. You were there in Cuba for 6 years or more. Why does that happen? Why can't we keep superintendents? Why is there instability at our districts where we can't even keep a superintendent longer than almost 2 years?
Well, I'm going to go back to the fact that you've got to look at the system, right? You've got to take a look. And again, those are political positions. I don't think people realize. And even when I was younger as a teacher and thought, oh, I'm going to get in because I'm going to be able to help change the system. And then what I saw was, wait, is the system going to change me? In fact, I had when I was working at Albuquerque High School as an activities director, when my principal came to me one day, because kids would come and tell me things and we would be doing advocacy, and he said, you know what? He said, you're young, you're Latina, you're a woman, all of these factors that I think you look at in terms of how, how you're going to be progressive. But if you just stop talking about equity and other things, you're going to be able to ascend the ladder. And I thought, okay, so what you're teaching me is I need to be quiet about the issues that completely affect children and their families and how they're going to be able to work or be able to move in the world. But in order to do that, I have to be quiet. And yet that's not what you need. You need leaders who can come to the forefront that can speak on behalf of children, just like I did in Cuba the 6 years that I was there. I really felt like the Board of Education was very, very important because they had a long term of superintendents turning over, high school principals turning over, but most importantly, their superintendents. And when they called and asked me and we met and we talked about me being there, I said to them, this is going to take some hard work because reforming institutions and you're the boss, right? The board's the boss. You're elected from the community, the voice of the community come forward. And I said, when we jump in the deep end of the pool, which we're going to have to do when we start talking about racial instability, looking at data and the data doesn't show that we're doing the right thing for kids, and we have to make these very important decisions. You need to throw me a life jacket, a life jacket or the little circle. And they said, we will. And every year I would remind them, we're here and we're doing this, and this is where we are. And we really looked at data. We really looked at where the kids were at, and we went back out into the community. Something that Brenda Chavez and others in Enlace had taught me is you have to go back to the community to hear what they have to say. And because that community was 78% Native American Navajo Dene from 3 local communities, and 22% Hispanic, again with the 78%, a lot of them are a dual race.
On that note, when you've always been an advocate for Latinos and Hispano students, but when you got to Cuba, you noticed that there was a racial difference. Hispanos were in charge, and Native American students, particularly Navajo, were being marginalized. What did you find?
What I found was shocking, actually. What I found in the data that we looked at. So when we first got there, I was there helping them with high school redesign. And, we come and we said, can we look at the data? Well, there wasn't a data set to look at. And I'm like, how can you not have a data set when you're really looking at where your kids are at and what you're going to do? 62% graduation rate at that time in 2018, 2019. We started pulling the data together and seeing what was happening. What we saw is that kids were being pushed out, specifically Native American kids, largely Native American boys. And when I say pushed out, I mean state laws were being used against them. Instead of helping them, they were being used against them. So they would tell me, I would be like, how come these kids are being dropped? Who's allowing you to drop these kids? Well, this is what we do. On the 10th way we drop them because of the state law on the 10 days. It's like, hold on. Have we gone out to do a home visit? Have we visited their parents? Do we know what's going on?
So you're basically returning to the Enlace model.
Trying to figure out, because a lot of what was happening in Enlace was really grounded in looking at the beauty of the community. And so
did the graduation rate
it did
improve over time?
Yes. We've now currently are at 97% in this last year.
From 60 to 90.
62 to 97.
Wow.
Right. And we did a lot of that by really, really targeted work and really looking at what was going on. We, because of the fact that we had the majority of our boys, mostly Native American boys, but our Hispanic boys as well, we said we need to turn and look to men in our community and bring them in and have them start working with our boys and show them, right, that maybe absence of a father or absence of a mentor or something, that we can bring that back and we can show them the beauty in who they are.
In our last 90 seconds, you've made so many improvements. So why walk away now?
It's time. I think it's time for me to retire and do some other things. Education will always be a part of me, and I will still continue to fight and get out into the, if you will, New Mexico and the other states to really combat the fact that we're not doing right by children. And we're the leaders. We're the ones that can make the changes because we're the ones that help with boards, control finances and policies, and be able to go to the legislature to ask for several initiatives that are important to children.
Dr. Karen Sanchez-Griego, thank you for joining us here on New Mexico in Focus, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
I think this is really important because our environment isn't the best. So planting in general is really good, especially having like a community, like a school, come together and plant. It gets the job done faster.
While thinking about an episode centered around education, we knew we wanted to return to a segment that addressed the student experience in New Mexico. Last October, we spoke to 2 school counselors who listened to concerns from those students every day. In my interview, I asked both of them what they're seeing from the students they work with and how adults can better help our young people learn and grow, mentally and emotionally. Brian, Devin, thank you for joining me on New Mexico in Focus this week.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
As we just heard, you both work as counselors in Albuquerque Public Schools, which gives you both unique insight into how students are doing, in a different way even than teachers interact with students in the classroom. I'm not a parent, but I am close with a lot of middle and high school age kids, and they have described over the course of the past few years some real difficulties that they have faced. So Brian, I would like to start with you with the big question. Are the kids all right?
Are the kids all right? That's a big question, like you said. For the most part, we're trying to get them to that space, but in all honesty, many of them are not. They're struggling. Many of them, a large majority of them are.
Can you describe sort of the patterns or the themes that you're seeing in that struggle? What has sort of underpinned the struggle that you're seeing?
Well, I think since the pandemic, we've seen an increase in problems with absenteeism and a lot more substance abuse in the school. Students just have a rough time getting to school in general a lot of the time. And if they had struggles before the pandemic, we've seen the struggles increase. So we're also seeing academic deficiencies as a result. So combined, we're just seeing a hodgepodge of large stuff they have to deal with. Yeah, issues, big issues.
Devin, I know you work at a smaller school as a counselor. What are some of the things, the unique challenges that you've seen with some of the students who come to you for help?
Well, I'm at an elementary level, so there's sometimes with the younger students, there's an undercurrent of hope even because they are younger and they have a lot of time to make things up and persevere. But since the pandemic, I've noticed a lot of social challenges, interacting with their peers in a way that's healthy, academic challenges for sure, which impact how they interact with their peers and how they are at school. So yes, I think the big question, the kids can be all right, but we need to all work together, and we are. I think educators, community, families, we all need to come together to kind of push them up towards all right. But right now we have many struggling kids.
So isolation is obviously a part of this. Students who were required to learn through a screen and instead of the face-to-face interaction that happens in the classroom. What has the transition back to in-person learning been like, and has that presented its own sort of unique challenges?
I think for the elementary level in particular, we're seeing kind of pockets of struggle, especially if they missed earlier years, pre-K, kinder, first, second, because that's where a lot of learning how to be in school takes place on top of academic learning. So I think that's been a struggle, and there's some nervousness, anxiety feeling from students. Not all, but we see it in how they interact with their peers, but also maybe want to escape the academic learning because they're feeling overwhelmed. But that's where we come in. That's where counselors come in, great educators come in. We kind of reteach those skills and build them back up. But I do see it with those younger kids as they move up that there was a deficit when they were behind the screen or not able to interact on playground or preschool or any place like that.
Brian, that's sort of the idea of social emotional learning, right? Which is different from what we're learning in classrooms, right? School is supposed to be something that's more than ABCs and 1 + 1 = 2. How do you help a student with that social emotional learning that they've maybe lost a little bit of that skill when they're trying to come back?
Definitely, we are noticing that students have lost some of those social emotional skills just in relating with one another, how to engage with teachers and other adults on campus. So we're seeing it just in all different areas in the school. And so what we try to do is we try to engage classrooms and small groups and even large groups in terms of like targeting how to treat one another, how to be safe online, how to function in school, because the pandemic has definitely affected kids in terms of just general school processes, you know, just coming to school every day, teaching the importance of being present every day. So it's an ongoing process. And at my particular school, I work at Highland High School. We have a theme every month, and we try to always include a social emotional theme. This month is Suicide Prevention Month, so we are doing that work this month, but we also try to talk about healthy relationships with students and how to be a partner to a friend or a romantic partner, or just be a positive family member and student. So we're reteaching those basic behaviors that students used to have by the time they reached 9th grade. So we're having to do some more teaching and definitely review with the whole student population, really.
How do the students respond to those themes? That sounds like I was a bit of a problem child in school. That would have been something that I might have thought like, oh goodness, I don't want to deal with that. How do they respond generally?
You know, it's surprising that teenagers are now talking more about mental health. And I think social media might be a positive thing about social media, because it's more apparent and it's out in the public now, all over social media. And I think students are aware of what it is to not feel well. And we're trying to get the message across to students that it's okay to not be okay. And they're taking that in kind of nicely and in a relaxed fashion. And I've noticed that since the pandemic, students are listening more intently regarding mental health issues.
And there's an acceptability around it.
Yes.
To say I'm not okay, or to have those conversations. I think that's really starting to be more apparent.
Right. There's a lot less stigma, I'm saying. And even we used to have to almost beg students at the high school level to get into therapy, because we do work with therapists on our campus. Many of our schools have community mental health professionals who are counselors and therapists who students can see. And now students are actually asking for help, which is nice, and they're receiving it a lot of the time. So it's positive.
I feel like we think of vulnerability sometimes in this context as like an invitation for kids to get hurt. But the idea of vulnerability as being able to concede or admit or say without shame or stigma that I'm not okay, how do you see that with younger kids, and how do you encourage that kind of vulnerability?
So I think much is in the same way you do. I mean, I do classroom lessons, I do small groups, I work with students individually, but I do hear it, that the vulnerability isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I know that when students sometimes feel vulnerable in the moment, in the classroom, in front of their peers, that's when we see behaviors. So I think making sure that we use the language, continue to make it acceptable, and so that they have the tools to speak up and say, I'm not doing okay, or I need help today, that's okay for them to say, and they don't feel shamed or bothered by it.
You mentioned the theme at Highland for this month is Suicide Prevention Month. We can't have this conversation without talking about violence in schools. When I was a student in elementary school and high school, it would have been incredibly rare, almost unimaginable, to think about a student bringing a gun to school, let alone using it on his classmates or teachers. That is a reality, unfortunately, that we are faced with all the time, and we have seen in our schools here. How, as a school counselor, do you work through that kind of reality with somebody who comes to you and wants to talk to you about it?
So first, we just always listen to each student with their concerns, and we definitely know that they are dealing with that fear. It's just like this generalized fear that students are carrying with them, and it's even evident by like little twitches they have. Some students have a hard time just sitting still, and their leg is always shaking, or they're needing to have some kind of stimulation. And then we just sort of like maybe dig a little deeper with students and try to get to the bottom of that fear. And oftentimes they are afraid, of the violence that's happening in the community and at school, because we never know what's going to happen, right? And we hear about school shootings all the time, and there are more guns out there and that are readily available, and students know what's going on. They really do, especially at the high school level. So there is that low level of fear that's just constantly present, but we try to process it with each student that needs to talk about it. And really, they all need to talk about it because they're all dealing with it on some level.
It's a horrible thing to have to adapt to. I can't imagine what that must be like. And I would imagine you don't deal with that quite as much with younger kids, but surely they're aware of some of what's going on too.
And they are. And then different students have different levels of access to the news and what their families talk about. And I think I notice it more when we do drills or fire drills, or if something unexpected happens. You feel an uptick of the nervous energy in the room of, is this something serious or is everything okay? But I think that's why we practice it. That's why we unfortunately have to, so that we can do those things smoothly. But they definitely hear it, they deal with it. And there are times when it's overwhelming for them, and that's when we listen, we process it with them, and we try to make them realize, help them realize that they're safe, that they've got lots of adults around them who care, and will do their best to keep them safe.
So unfortunately, not many kids watch our show, but a lot of their parents, and in some cases grandparents, do watch our show. So what about the kid who is doing the best they can in school, but has some of those outside stressors at home, whether it's a family member who's dealing with a behavioral health issue, a substance use disorder, homelessness? I recently read a story in the Journal about the large number of homeless students in APS. How can all adults, not just parents, but all of us, listen better to kids and find ways to meet them where they are?
I think the key is being open to listening and hearing them where they're at. Depending on how old they are, the language might be different, but making those times to sit with them, to really listen to them, to ask questions, and be prepared to hear what they have to say. It really does take everyone being on board and being willing, a grandparent, a parent, reaching out to the people in their students' lives, the counselors, the teacher, to say, hey, this is happening. Can we get some support from the school? Can we get some support from the school counselor? Because we hear what we can hear, but we rely on the adults in their lives reaching out so that we can bridge through home and school and be the best support we can.
Brian, are there other strategies for those of us who are not school-age kids anymore to be there for kids and to help them kind of get through these really challenging times?
Well, I think I'm just going to piggyback off Devin, and what she said is just right on. Just be available to hear what students are saying. And it's okay to ask the rough questions. Mm-hmm. It's okay to ask the deep, deep questions too, like, are you doing okay mentally? Are you doing okay emotionally? Are you having thoughts of hurting yourself or others? Those are difficult questions to ask, but studies have shown that just by asking those questions can prevent many tragedies. So I would encourage people just to ask the deep questions if you're concerned or worried. And even if you're not concerned about a student, kids and teens can really cover up their mental health issues. So it's good to dig a little deeper and ask the question a couple times, not just once. Because oftentimes their common response is, I'm doing good, I'm fine. Are you really fine? Because I'm not feeling that you're fine. So it's okay to dig a little deeper.
The follow-up question.
And try not to be too judgmental, like Devin said. Just be ready to be open and affirming to what students are bringing to you, because it's a different age and we're all progressing and growing, but they are dealing with just many, many deep issues.
And perhaps even like piggybacking off of what they're watching, what they're seeing, and use that as an opportunity. Like, oh, that character's going through that. Have you ever dealt with that? Or do you have friends that are going through this? Just to use it as an opener for the bigger conversation and let them be comfortable to answer.
I feel like this has been a conversation filled with difficult questions. I would love to end on a note of hope and optimism without obviously revealing any personal identifiers or a specific kid. Devin, can you think of some stories or themes and resilience that you've seen from the students that you've worked with over the course of these really challenging past couple of years?
Well, as you ask that question, I find myself smiling because I do have hope. I care so deeply for my students, and I see little successes every day. I don't think I could say one specific one just because I am at a small school, but I see little successes in students asking to go to a calming center instead of running out of the room or instead of ripping up paper. I see that as success that we can build on, that they're learning to regulate their behavior so that they can be present to make up any academic deficits or social deficits. But I am very hopeful. I think our educators, our teachers are working tirelessly, and in our school, we see academic gains just this last year, which is positive and wonderful. And I see social, emotional growth. So I think, like I said in the beginning, they will be okay if we all work together and we really put this time and effort into it as we have been. We just need to continue doing it.
Brian, what are the kids at Highland doing to be okay? What are some of the cool things that you've seen in the face of all of this?
Well, at Highland, we're really proud because our graduation rate has been increasing over the past 5 to 7 years, which is really good. And we're just seeing a lot of resilience in our area, being that we're in the international district. There's a lot that happens in the international district, and not all of it is negative, but some of it is. And our kids are just showing just a tremendous amount of resilience just by making it to school.
Yes.
And graduating in 4 years. Not all graduate in 4 years, but we try to encourage students. It's important to graduate. If it takes 5, that's fine. So we work with students who are not on track, but many of our students are getting back on track, and they're doing the hard work of taking extra classes in the evening and in the summer and making it to graduation. So it's not all of them, but a large majority of them are, and so we're happy about that.
Brian, Devin, thanks for coming, and thanks for ending with the hope.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Let's step away for a moment from K through 12 and turn our attention to higher education. St. John's College has created a searchable database of books and works published by their alumni. One of the latest added to the growing list is The Death of Learning, a critique and a defense of a liberal arts education by Dr. John Agresto, a former president of St. John's. His work is the foundation for a discussion correspondent Gwyneth Dolan hosted in May with Dr. Agresto and 2 other alumni, Dr. Patricia Southoff and Salvatore Sciabona. Here's Gwyneth.
Thank you to our guests who are joining from all over the world. Dr. Agresto, here in the United States, top universities are in turmoil, with students and others camping out on campus, protesting the war in Gaza. At the same time, schools are under fire for allowing freedom of speech, even when it's ugly, hurtful, hateful. How does this tension of this moment reflect your ideas about how education has gone wrong?
We could spend a lot of time on that question, I must say. The simplest answer is we've sort of forgotten what an expansive liberal education should look like, what it entails. Part of it is the fault of students, parents, the culture. We think that you go to college, even high school, to get a job, to find out what you want to be for the rest of your life. What a scary thought that at 17, you're going to know what you want to be for the rest of your life. I don't even know now at 78 what I want to be for the rest of my life. I'm still working on it. So we have this whole connection to utility that defines school these days. On the other hand, there are those purists in the liberal arts who don't want to talk about utility at all, that the liberal arts are simply rarefied, purely academic, and I try to walk the middle ground between that. And I know that's a tough thing to do, always to walk the middle ground between things. I think that a decent, solid, let's even call it traditional liberal education, is a great it's a great help to you to figure out who you are and why you are and what you want to be, if possible. And it's a great help, a traditional liberal education, to the country. Look around. Do we have enough people who understand history, economics, human psychology, motivation of human actions, American constitutional and philosophical principles? Think of how much better we'd be if we understood those things as a people. And instead, we don't have that.
Well, as a journalist, I often wish that constitutional law were required in college.
And that's another thing that happened. I mean, over since the mid to late 80s, was all the set courses: Western civilization, American history, philosophy, the classics, have all first became electives rather than required, and then were simply in themselves spurned as somehow against the modern coming age. And students have reacted against that by saying, all right, if you don't want me to study, if you don't think it's worth my while to study history or philosophy or classical literature, I'll take accounting. Thank you very much.
Dr. Southoff, I want to come to you. Thank you for joining us from Hong Kong, where it is midnight. So we appreciate this sacrifice on your part. Your book from Oxford University Press is Illness and Immortality. In it, you write about a medieval Sanskrit text, the Netra Tantra. Please tell us, what does this 1,200-year-old text have to give us about the world we live in now? I mean, what connects what you're studying late at night with your oil lamp? What connects that to things that are relevant to us here in New Mexico?
Well, a lot, actually. So this book came out of my PhD work. So it is, very narrow. That's just the nature of PhD work. But this is a book about the rituals that people did to prevent illness in their relatives, their fear of death, their hope of living long lives. And it ties into medicine. What I'm studying now sounds just as arcane. It's Indian alchemy, but this is, early pharmacology. I was just reading something today, a recipe for a ritual ingredient that is basically a perfume. It's the ingredients that are in the perfumes at Sephora, right? So we have this whole history of botany and religion. Astronomy comes into it, right? You have to do rituals at a certain time of the year. So we can see that these people were just like us. They were afraid of death. They were afraid of illness. They're praying when people are ill. They're turning to the gods. They're turning to medicine. I mean, they're no different than we are. They're just writing in a language that most of us can't read.
I love that. I love that. I want to move to you. Salvatore Scibona is a National Book Award finalist, the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, and he was awarded the $200,000 Mildred and Harold Strauss Living Award for his most recent book, The Volunteers. Thank you for being with us. You were
Good to be with you.
A terrible student in high school, you wrote in The New Yorker. You almost failed out of school. At St. John's, though, you learned to read, you said. And you went on, of course, to the Iowa Writers' Workshop, which has produced half the novels on our shelves right now and a dozen Pulitzer Prize winners, so it turned out okay. But I want you to talk to us about falling in love with reading and how that impacted your trajectory, how that got you where you are today.
Yeah, I think I went to St. John's because I one of the reasons I was such a terrible student was that I was learning a lot in forms that were sort of disjointed. I was being taught little skills and little kind of widgets of understanding that bored me. And then in certain classes, I was just given a book to read. Just the whole book. Just read the whole book. Novels obviously are that's my bailiwick. But there are people for whom the book is kind of a sacred object. And I had no books in the house growing up. We had a public library. But there was a Betty Crocker cookbook and the Bible. Neither one of them ever opened. But you know, there are people for whom that like attachment at a certain point in your growing up is the way toward possibilities of of every kind. And the people that I went to St. John's with, as most people in New Mexico probably know, there's no class choice there, and the liberal arts curriculum is really, really, really broad. You'd be amazed with the work that people do coming out of it. I mean, I'm a fiction writer. Of my close friends from there, one of them, three of them actually became Arabic specialists for the Navy. One is the head of the physics department at Bard College. One is a PhD researcher of the eyeball. I mean, people are really they come out with a preparation to follow an immense diversity of study, and also with a healthy curiosity that and a way to sort of practice of using their curiosity to follow new things throughout their lives. And that's what we were kind of told to hope for, to expect. And it's totally true. A couple of years ago, I went to Iceland for 3 weeks to do a class on Icelandic because I'd fallen in love with this novelist, Halldór Laxness, who died about 20 years ago. And I just wanted to get closer to those books. And St. John's, because I learned ancient Greek and French at St. John's, part of what we were learning was how to learn a language, how to break down a language, how to understand the structure of a language that's a form that's foreign to you, and reassemble, and assemble it in your mind. So, since St. John's, I've gone on to study like three other languages formally. None of those things were specifically. I got no specific training from St. John's in any of those things, but I got a perfect training in how to learn them.
Oh, that's a good point. I like it. Dr. Agresto, you've written about growing up poor in Brooklyn, where as a kid, your best opportunity was going to get a trade and join a union, right? But a liberal arts education gave you everything: a career, recognition, leading St. John's and the American University in Iraq. But the death of learning is also a critique of a liberal arts education. So talk to us for a minute about what you think. I mean, I'm sitting here in a university right now, right? What do we need to change to make it work?
Part of it has to do with beginning to understand what the promise of a liberal education is. And as Salvatore was just saying, it doesn't tell you what you're going to be, but gives you the tools of being all kinds of wonderful things, and all kinds of even practical things. But what it does best is it teaches you how to think, how to speak, how to write with clarity, with precision, with grace. You read some of the finest things ever written, and you take them to heart. We don't all take the same things to heart. I still can't read Immanuel Kant and enjoy it very much. But I can read simpler things. I could read Jefferson and Madison. I could read de Tocqueville. I could read Abraham Lincoln. I can't tell you. You might say Abraham Lincoln. I have learned more about thinking of America and its promise and its problems from reading the poetry of Abraham Lincoln. We think about the Gettysburg Address. It's actually a prayer, full of metaphors, full of allusions to the Old and New Testaments, and it has a kind of cadence to it. I learned as much from reading Lincoln as I learned from Shakespeare, who I think is 460th birthday today. So I remember when I first understood what it meant that Shakespeare writes his plays and poetry. That was amazing to me.
Now, let me just say, we are, the four of us sitting here right now, sort of slightly older white people, right? And is there an element of privilege in a liberal arts education? I want to put this to all of you as a question. Is this as accessible today to everyone as it should be. I mean, how are we supposed to say to a kid who's trying to climb out of poverty now, you shouldn't be an accountant, right? You shouldn't go to a community
No, we don't say
college,
that to them.
right?
We don't say that. We say, learn about the world and learn about yourself and learn about your possibilities. And then you want to be an accountant, you'll be the best accountant in the firm. Don't worry about it. But hey, Salvatore and I grew up poor. I had no books in my house either, none. And it was an amazing thing to discover reading ideas. We got two poor Italian guys here who fell in love with William Shakespeare. You couldn't be deader and whiter than William Shakespeare.
I think you're right. It is totally a privilege, and it's a privilege that ought to be available to anybody who wants
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I think I have a slightly different perspective on it because I haven't taught in the United States since, well, it's been about 20 years. I've been teaching in India, Canada, and now Hong Kong. And, in Canada, I think is more like the US. It's still not as accepted. But in India and in Hong Kong, there is a push toward liberal arts education. They're kind of pushing toward that sort of idealized Western liberal arts education that we had. So at my university, there are general studies courses that every student has to take, and they're all liberal arts. And so there is, globally, I think it's still very respected in a way that it's not back home.
Salvatore, we have 1 minute left. Did you want to share something?
Well, yeah, I just don't. I think that the rap against the liberal arts, the totally understandable rap right now has to do with return on investment. And I totally understand that it is a huge undertaking to go into debt, to work. Lots of places have looked at this problem and have not figured out how to crack it. St. John's did a remarkable thing a number of years ago where they knocked down the tuition. Partly because there was a sticker price problem that made a whole lot of people feel like it was inaccessible to them before they even got into the financial aid process. But at a deeper level, the issue is that whole argument that an education needs to be about return on investment treats a person's mind as though it's an instrument of capital and nothing else. As though you're going to spend money on your mind and you're going to extract a certain amount of money out of it. Of course, we want a certain amount of that is necessary in life, but it's not the core of what the humanist education is for. And it's not what most of us are, it's not what most of us are living for. We're not really living for that. A liberal arts education is really about your life more than it's about your occupation. Your occupation is part of your life. You know what I mean?
Dr. Patricia Southoff, one last thought from you.
One of the greatest things that I've gotten from my liberal arts education is the context. So when I travel the world, I don't study China, but now that I live in Hong Kong, I've read the classics. And so I have this context that so many expats don't have. I went to Japan recently, I'd read their books. So I know some of the history. And just I got into this so that I could travel the world without having any money to do so. And I've been lucky enough to now be able to travel the world and take that knowledge that I got with me on my adventures.
Well, thank you for that. We really appreciate all of your time.
Thanks to Gwyneth and those three authors. Now back to K through 12 and a program aiming to connect students to the environment around them. Next time you pass through the Rio Grande corridor, keep an eye out for the thriving milkweed plants. Those plants are there thanks in part to students from Sandia High School, who this spring set aside their textbooks to plant thousands of seeds. We first told you about the River of Monarchs project this spring. The goal? To help restore the Rio Grande's habitat and make the land more hospitable for the monarch butterfly.
up. And then totally alright. But I'm also gonna seal toothpaste. Not that, because they're gonna got a bunch of fruit up. We're gonna plant in the greenhouse, and you'll see these plants here in the greenhouse for the next few months. So they will get planted next fall, and that will give them lots of time to grow and get nice roots so that we can put them out in the field. All right, so you guys can head in the greenhouse. Is anyone excited about mixing soil and getting really dirty?
I got so messy today. There was a lot of dirt. But it was fun, very fun.
I love monarchs. I have been interested in them forever. And we're helping the monarchs because there's lots of invasive species in New Mexico that are interfering with the milkweed's growth. The monarchs, caterpillars can only eat off of the milkweed, so it's crucial that we plant this milkweed out there in areas where the butterflies will be migrating from the US to Mexico.
Okay.
We need to get 2 species of milkweed planted that are native to New Mexico by the rivers. That way the monarchs can lay their eggs and caterpillars can hatch and feed off of them. And I see this beautiful little creature that is pollinating different plants and really helping our environment. I think all species are crucial to keep an ecosystem running, because if one of those species falls down, it's a chain reaction, and so species after species, plant or animal, is going to get affected. Everything's connected somehow in some way.
In 2024, they're going to plant it by the Bosque. And yeah, we're just going to wait for the plants to grow in the greenhouse.
I think this is really important because our environment isn't the best. So planting in general is really good, especially having like a community, like a school, come together and plant. It gets the job done faster. And then
when we went out today to plant the milkweeds, we had several stations where students were split up into different groups. The first group was preparing the soil to get it ready for the seeds. When they got a wheelbarrow a bit full, they went to the next group, and what that group was doing was taking the seed trays that have 98 pots each. Oh, look at that. And we were filling those with soil.
It's like quarter. Okay.
We were tamping them down to get the air pockets out and kind of topping them off.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
When that was finished, we went to the third and last station, is where we brought them in physically into the greenhouse. And then the students were taking 2 or 3 milkweed seeds each and putting them into each of the pots very carefully.
So if you're doing seedlings, you can do like 3 of them like this. Just put them all together. We don't want any more than about 1 inch of space between the top and the top of the pot and the top of the soil, and then just cover them up. So it's an entire tray. Thank you.
And that took the longest part, was that step. And then, of course, watering throughout this whole process. This is all new to them. I'm sure most of them have not had any experience like this whatsoever. And so I think between myself and folks at the Institute of Applied Ecology, just to kind of show them, heck, it is just dirt. You know, you do have to do things right. But if, you know, a little dirt falls out, it's okay. You know, like if 1 seed falls, it's okay. And it's not so serious that they can't crack a smile or something, you know, like it's going to work out. You know, like we're still planting thousands of milkweeds. There's no divorce between having enjoyment and doing something important. One of my goals is to just kind of open their eyes to just how amazing a place New Mexico is. Like environmentally speaking, we have so many biomes that meet right here. You know, Albuquerque's on one of 5 rift valleys in the world. We have more volcanoes than almost any other state, and it's such a great place. And so our natural area out here is just nothing but native species. The monarchs are one of those, and the milkweeds are one of those. By protecting and restoring some of this habitat for milkweeds, we're also inadvertently protecting it from many other species. And so I think maybe the importance of intact habitat is crucial a lot of vacant lots are going to have like your handful of, tumbleweeds, goat heads, ragweed, these invasive species. And so if we're out there actively planting some of the natives, we get them a foothold, we get them established. And natives beget natives beget natives. Milkweeds are going to help the goldenrods to come in, and the grama grass. Just kind of like a snowball effect, hopefully, right? So one native species protecting that one's going to protect this one, and because that one comes back, the third one comes in, and hopefully we'll see this project just kind of blossom and grow. I think for me, a really important part of being part of this project is I like teaching the theory of biology, stuff from the book, but instead of just lecturing on the steps of mitosis or the importance of keystone species, I can go out there and say, here kids, let's go out and let's actually work with this and let's make a difference with this.
Sure. Well, that should be out. Yeah. They stayed in the greenhouse until like May. Well, until this that season.
Not only even planting the seed, but getting the seed ready to wake up, waking the seeds up, planting the seeds, taking care of these plants for months and months and months until they are mature enough and large enough to take care of themselves in the wild. We get to go out to the wild, we get to plant these in these compromised right now ecosystems and watch how what we've done is going to help restore these habitats. And by doing so, it's going to be more of a resource for the monarchs, many other species, and my students get to be one of the steps in the many steps it takes to kind of bring the native New Mexico ecosystem back to where they should be. And go out there and say, here kids, here's how we helped, and here's how it's going to make an impact, a positive, and this is how you're going to be able to see it. You made this happen. And so I think that is, how do you put a price on that? For students, I think that's great.
Thanks to everyone who contributed to this week's show, and thank you for watching. As always, we'll see you next week. But first, a message from Our Land's Laura Paskus.
Hi, I'm Laura Paskus, senior producer of Our Land. A few years ago, I started working with Molly Parsons, an environmental educator, to create middle school lesson plans around our environmental programming. I thought it would be really neat to take some of our shows about things like climate change, water, and wildlife, and provide students with localized, accurate information about New Mexico's environmental issues. And it has been so fun working with Molly. This summer, we released 3 new lesson plans based on our recent show, Loving Our Changing Homelands. The 3 new lessons feature videos from Paula Garcia, Executive Director of the New Mexico Acequia Association, and Teresa Pascual and Aaron Loudon from the Pueblo of Acoma. They talk about climate change and stewardship, watersheds, seeds and culture, and how we fit into the landscapes around us, how we exist in relationship with our waters, lands, and communities. You don't have to be a middle school student or a teacher to learn about these things. Anyone can visit nmpbs.org/ourland, or you can Google PBS Learning Media and Our Land.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.